Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Full Court Press. I am your host, Drew Duncan. Do not forget that Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan83. Additionally, you can find me on YouTube. Simply look for Drew Duncan. And, of course, the Full Court Press is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. And don't forget, you can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. Via iHeart, Google, Deezer, etc. Florida versus Miami, a barn burner. There's some ins and outs and some bottom lines. Florida comes away victorious is probably the bottom line. In a game where if I'm either team, I'm not really I'll take the win, but I'm not really sure of how proud I am of it, right? There's the whole rival thing. There's the whole, right now, we're probably the top team in the state thing. There's all that stuff, right? Which is good. Look, I'm not going to take anything completely away from these teams, and I know it's a first game out, but obviously for me, I saw a lot of things coaching-wise from both teams that would bother me if I was a fan of either one of these teams. It goes beyond game management late in the game. It goes beyond some of the sloppy football that we saw, especially in the fourth quarter from both teams. It goes beyond all that. It really does. If I'm a Miami fan and I watch this football game, can I really think to myself, well, we played them close? Because I'm going to tell you something. Williams is a hell of a quarterback. He really is. And I know there was this whole thing all night long throughout the game about him holding onto the football for too long and just not making good decisions. Look, if there's nobody open, what's he supposed to do? And I know everybody will throw it away. And, yeah, he avoided some fumbles. But when you get sacked 10 times in a football game, that is a serious problem with your play calling, with your offensive line, with how you're adjusting the blitzes. I mean, they didn't bother to leave in running backs to help block until basically the last drive of that football game. And it was a hell of a block, but I think it was Harris, if I remember correctly. And it wasn't even talked about. The times when he had time to throw the football is when really Florida just only rushed 3 guys. Look, here's the thing. I didn't really like the play calling from Miami for a good majority of this football game. Right? They start out with these quick out throws, these throws out in the flat, and we literally were seeing the same play call. They would just decide to go to the other side of the field. Oh, it worked on this side. Let's go to this side. And I understand you're trying to kind of probe that defense a little bit and find out where weakness is. But both teams, when it came down to it, because of some of the play calling, especially from Miami, had difficulty finishing drives. Why didn't Miami, if they were so gung-ho on trying to run some screenplays, especially late in that football game, going to the well too many times, 3 too many times, 4 too many times, if they were going to do that, why didn't they line up all 5 receivers and run some mid-screens, right? You line up 3 guys to the outside. You let your fastest wide out catch one. You've got a big tight end like Jordan. Why not? And by the way, they're a phenomenal blocking core, this wide receiver group. We saw that especially early on in the football game, right? That first drive, when they hit Florida in the mouth pretty good and got down, they came in with the field goal, probably should have been able to score. Again, play calling was an issue. But they proved that they're a good core of blockers for yards after the catch. So why weren't they doing some of those things? Some wide receiver mid-screens. It was just like they kept trying to run the same type of play just in a different formation, and it really wasn't working. I mean, look, despite the fact that Williams had, I think he had been sacked 5 times in that first half. Despite that, he still had 154 yards passing. A lot of it was yards after the catch. There were some throws that he did make over the middle. They really didn't take a whole lot of deep shots, though overall guys couldn't get open was a big part of it. Regardless, if you're enamored with the short game, mix up the style of how you do it to keep them off balance, because then you can start running some draw plays. You know, when the defense is coming down on you like that and the run game's not working, a play-action pass really isn't going to do a whole lot for you. There were times when I thought, man, they should really run some play action right now. like first quarter. They get that huge play, the yards after the catch. And what do? They come back and they go to the same exact play, just the other side of the field. I thought this would be a moment they could run play action. Now, a couple of drives later, they did that, and they accomplished what they were looking for. But that's because at that moment, the defense was off balance. The game management from Miami, at the end of that football game, beyond horrendous. Look, you force 4 turnovers. You get 3 points off of it. You get how many pass interference calls down the stretch? Which, by the way, the play before the one where they picked up the flag that was in the end zone could have been another pass interference. You get how many points off of it? I understand that Miami was living for the majority of that football game on their own side of the field, starting a good majority of drives inside their own 20, own 10, own 5. I get all that, and I understand that it changes your play calling a little bit. But when you start being able to get down the field, or you have drives where you're at the 25-yard line to start with, come on. And how about the fact that they got that turnover, what was it, fourth quarter, and they ran the football 3 straight times. They go for it on fourth down. They get the first down. The penalty gets offset or overrides the holding call because they were able to get a call of a late hit out of bounds. So they get 3 more cracks at it. Then they miss a field goal. So you basically end up where you started to begin with. I just don't understand it. It was like the wrong time to run that fake field goal. It was definitely the wrong time to do it. And to me, it should have seemed obvious that they were going to do it. I do want to give credit to Florida's defense for forcing all those sacks. But here's the thing. Again, watching this game, I'll take the win, but is it one that when I look back on the rest of the season, depending on how this goes, and I don't know that Florida is going to finish very well, am I going to be proud of it? Coach Howard Schnellenberger, who was the head coach for the Miami Hurricanes when they won their first ever national title, literally said when they beat Nebraska that he felt that they were going to win the game because Nebraska started running gimmick plays. And he always felt, and a lot of coaches feel this way, that if you can't beat me straight up, you don't feel like you can beat me. And Florida took a huge gamble early on because they were getting smacked around and decided to fake a punt on their own 20-yard line, 25-yard line. And it worked for them. And then, of course, the next play, they end up getting a touchdown. They take a lead, and from there, everything kind of goes back and forth. But Florida had a hard time finishing drives as well, right? And they were starting generally from midfield or better, and they couldn't finish drives. Again, is that a credit to the Miami defense, or what does that say about Florida's offense? Because on the fumble that happened inside, the 10-yard line, on that fumble that happened when Felipe Franks was trying to run that option play, you can call it zone read, RPO, whatever you want to call it. Bottom line is it's an option. When he was trying to run that option play, he put the ball in too far inside to P. Ryan, and that's what ended up causing the fumble. Then, of course, later on, they had to hurry up and get rid of it, and then it looked like, they could have at least reviewed it, so it's questionable as to whether or not that was truly a fumble recovery by Miami. Regardless, it ends up being their football. But again, they started when that drive began. I mean, they just couldn't finish drives. Neither team really could. It was really big plays on what both teams scored touchdowns on when it boiled down to it. You had, Florida with that 66-yard play, and then you had Florida with that, big long pass. It was 4 plays, 80 yards, and they score on the next play, so they needed a big hit to get them down there in position to score. Then you had that long run by DJ Dallas, if I remember correctly, by Miami. I mean, it was mostly big hit plays. Neither team did a very good job of tackling. We saw a lot of guys going in for big hits, couldn't get it done. Wrap up, drive, and bring him down. You can blame the new rules all you want to, but the bottom line of that is there was some atrocious tackling, and guys were able to bounce off tacklers because other guys were going for big hits, and they couldn't make things happen. Florida fan isn't going to want to hear this, but Miami beat themselves in this football game. You get 4 turnovers. You only score 3 points off of them. You had how many pass interference calls on that last drive after you got the interception, which, by the way, I didn't like. All he did was throw up the U. To me, no big deal. There shouldn't have been a penalty after that interception, but it did knock you back 15 yards. And you get another penalty that knocks you back another 15 yards. You got 1st and 25. You end up with 4th and 34. You get a pass interference. 3rd and 12, you get a pass interference. How do you not put something together to win that football game? I don't know. Look, this has happened before, right? We see this a lot of times with, like, the Tennessee Volunteers. They'll start out, a top 25 team at the beginning of the season. They'll play some tough competitor. We saw this especially later on in the early 2000s before 2010, and even a couple of times afterwards. They'd play somebody, and they looked really good because the game was close. And so it was like, wow, this is still a really good football team. And then as the season went along, we found out very quickly that they're really not a good football team. Miami's schedule is far different from Florida's, right? I think there's no ranked opponents outside of if they play Clemson, right, for the rest of their schedule, whereas, obviously Florida is going to have to play in the SEC. Then on top of that, they're, Florida-Georgia game and all that kind of stuff. So, they're going to have some competition down the road. And the way that I look at it for Florida is if I can't convert on 3rd down and I'm constantly relying on 4th downs to get me to where I need to go, then maybe my offense is not as solid as I think it is. And I'm afraid of that offense. If I remember correctly, Florida didn't convert any 3rd downs at all tonight. They did convert, 3 4th downs, but they did not convert any 3rd downs. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 in there, but none that come to my recollection. Simple fact of the matter is this. Florida's defense did step up, but Miami's offensive line looked horrible and the play calling was atrocious. Florida's defense almost gave the game away because of the pass interference calls. And Miami just seemed like they were doing everything that they could. I understand that this is a very young Miami football team. And I know that Florida won 10 games a season ago and they beat Michigan. But how many top 25 teams has Michigan beat since Jim Harbaugh's been there? I'll wait. No? Okay. So the bottom line in this game is Florida wins. They're probably still going to be ranked in the top 10. They have Towson and a couple of other teams on their schedule that the SEC always puts up that are not going to be very good. It's kind of a we'll see, but I think they win 7 games this year, to be perfectly honest with you. They may get over on a Georgia or somebody like that, but because of their defense being as good as it probably is, as good as it looked tonight, if it's really truly this good, right, minus the pass interference calls that they got on quite a frequent basis, they'll win games because of their defense. Offensively, as much as Felipe Franks has, supposedly matured in this offense and matured as an athlete and all those kinds of things, I really just don't see where they are a contender to go and play for a national title, let alone an SEC title. Guys, I am Drew Duncan, host of the Full Court Press. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan 83. Additionally, you can find me on YouTube. Simply look for Drew Duncan. And, of course, the Full Court Press is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. And as always, don't you dare touch that dial.